I failed as a filmmaker, and here's why. Hello filmmakers, Ash here, and welcome to Film It Yourself. So, I failed, big time. But before we can get into that, we first need to back up. You see, recently one of my short films was reviewed by Film Thread, and it was, well, less than glowing. So, I figured it'd be a good time to take a moment and reflect on this project I spent a year and a half on, maybe even more. And before we go too far down the road, I did ask Film Thread to review it, so I did want to thank them for spending the time to review, even if it went from critical to kind of mean there at the end. I mean, isn't the worst thing I've ever seen but gets a 1 out of 10? Well, okay then. But that all being said, Enrique Acosta makes a lot of good points. Points I knew during the project. Points I haven't talked about publicly because they cost me a friendship. But I feel they are totally valid and worth talking about, so I figured, why not? 2020 is already a dumpster fire. If talking about them can help future filmmakers not make the same mistakes, then I want to help. So let's get into it. Grab some popcorn and gather round for story time. I started talking about this project in March of 2018 with said ex-friend. He had, as Acosta pointed out, a really good idea for a sitcom, and I had been dreaming about making a web series. So he pitched that we would be co-creators and both write. He'd produce, I'd direct. Things started out great actually, but guess what we didn't do? We didn't do contracts. Yep, rookie mistake. I know, but hey, we'd been friends for 8 years. What could go wrong? Well, everything. Always have a contract, especially with friends. And if you want to know more about contracts, here's the video where I go over exactly why you need a contract and which ones are super important. I also have links to where you can download them for free in the description of that video. Anyway, mistake number 1. No contracts. You see, contracts help set clear expectations for everyone involved. And because we didn't have one, my ex-friend and I ended up having very different expectations. This started a rift that unfortunately was unrepairable. I was under the impression we were making a video as part of a Kickstarter campaign. You see, the plan was, or so I thought, we would make a video to show my other YouTube channel's fan base and get their support to make a full series, since it'd be pretty expensive to make the full series ourselves. However, I think my ex-friend had different expectations. I think he was just hoping to make a good pilot episode and was trying to set up the world. Plus, it was super important to him to surprise the audience with the zombie twist at the end, which sounds good if this was just a standalone film or something. But as Acosta pointed out, the zombie at the end isn't a surprise because how could it be? All of the marketing, the Kickstarter campaign, the behind the scenes series I did, it was all built around people being hooked by the good idea. Zombie apocalypse meets family sitcom. That was the good idea that always made everyone's eyes light up, and it was the good idea the script started with. The original script was very different. There was no zombie surprise. Instead, it had the backdrop of a zombie apocalypse, axes on the wall, and only lantern light to light them. But the comedy for me came in with the stark contrast of the sitcom over-the-top dialogue and acting with the very dark zombie background. This juxtaposition of gritty apocalypse with upbeat sitcom humor is what for me made it super funny. But my ex-friend decided he wanted to take it in a different direction because he felt the plot twist was better. However, once that juxtaposition was removed, we were left with a not-so-great sitcom episode that has an obvious twist at the end. Again, Acosta nailed it. mistakes just kept rolling in. We were no longer working as a team. Instead, we were working as two filmmakers with very different goals. And the end result reflects that. The whole project was suddenly different than what was originally pitched to me. To make matters worse, we made mistake number 2. We didn't split the cost of the project. Instead, my ex-friend was funding the first video 100% himself, and then the plan was to leverage my YouTube fan base to raise the larger sum to make the whole web series. Now, obviously, this isn't always bad, and as a professional filmmaker, you're going to have investors or maybe even studios funding your film, so it was a great learning lesson for me there. I realized I needed to learn to adapt to investors' wants, which is challenging. However, if you're making a small film with friends, I highly encourage you to split the cost evenly and have those conversations as early as possible. Honestly, do it before you do anything else because conflict will arise down the line if you don't hammer out those details. Get the details of the split in writing and put it in a contract. Remember that? Mistake number 1 fueled mistake number 2. But the reason I stress this is because if it's an even split, no one person can feel like they have more ownership over someone else. You see, my ex-friend felt he had more ownership as the project went on. It was his idea after all, and he was 100% funding it, but I felt like I should have say too. I was a co-creator after all, and we were leveraging my YouTube audience to pay the larger sum to make the entire web series. This added fuel to the fire though, and quickly the project shifted from co-creators to a completely different vibe. I felt creatively unheard and honestly expressed a lot of the points Acosta points out, but felt they fell on deaf ears. Plus, I was working for free and doing a lot, and we were going to leverage my fan base. Later, my ex-friend told me he felt the same way. He felt he was not being heard and like his ideas were falling on deaf ears. And this led us to mistake number 3, communication. You see, we didn't set down clear guidelines for communication, and it was his first big creative project. Because of that, things that were obvious about filmmaking processes to me weren't obvious to him. Roles and processes weren't clearly defined, and this made communication break down fast. Plus, he was on the other side of the world for several months of the project, which really made communication difficult. This all led to a lot of poor communication on both of our parts, through email and in person, and honestly kind of helped inspire my filmmaking channel because I realized there's a huge need for this stuff to be explained to new filmmakers. The saddest part in all this, besides losing a friend, is that the end result totally reflects all the drama that went on behind the scenes. We're left with something that isn't great, but really could have been, and at no fault of the rest of the fantastic cast and crew. So, if there's an important lesson for future filmmakers here, it's that conflicts during production will make your final product suffer. And as a filmmaker, there's nothing worse. You want to do everything you can to make sure your final product is as good as it can be. And to do that, make sure you avoid those 3 mistakes. Number 1, always have contracts in place before doing any work. Number 2, split the cost of the film evenly so the financial weight is even. And number 3, always clearly communicate and make sure everyone is on the same page. But also, and most importantly, that it's okay to fail, because failing is just a part of learning. If I hadn't learned all those lessons, I wouldn't have gone on to make my award-winning short film, Zombie Debt, right after. But because I did, I was careful about each one of these 3 points and made sure I didn't make the same mistakes twice. I learned a lot from this project. In a lot of ways, I'm really proud of it, and in a lot of ways, I'm really not. But now I know what important mistakes to avoid and have carried those lessons on with me with all the other projects I've done since, which thankfully have all gone smoothly. I'm thankful I had the chance to learn these mistakes, and I'm thankful I got to work with the other awesome cast and crew that hung in there during it. I'm extremely proud of what we put together despite the challenges, but I also now know I can do better in the future. Okay, story done.